What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 35, where my wildcard is active and I'm bench boosting in Game Week 37. So I'm going to run you through how the draft currently looks, thoughts on which players are locked in, and which kind of combinations I could maybe change to as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I will say, because I've already recorded it, the review section of this video is about 7 minutes long. Lots of discussion about free hit 29, free hit 34. Hopefully we can just put it to bed after this video. But if you want to skip past that, go to about 8 minutes, and that's where I start talking about my draft for Game Week 35 onwards. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with Game Week 34. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. For my team, it was absolutely terrible. I went into Game Week 34 with 10 double Game Week players plus Haaland. And if Haaland missed out, I had another double Game Week player on the bench in Zabani, who scored 7 points. So I actually ended up with 11 double Game Week players and finished on 82 points. And compared to some of the free hit scores in particular that are going around, that is awful. That is an awful, awful week. I've fallen from 38k to 75k. And it does feel like a little bit disheartening because you spend the whole season trying to get up to a decent rank. I was 25k a few game weeks ago. And in the last 2 weeks, I've gone all the way down to 75k. So I've dropped 50,000 places. And don't get me wrong, 75k is not a terrible rank or anything like that. But it feels pretty bad given where I was a few weeks ago. And obviously, I've got the wild card to come, still got the bench boost. But I think the reality is those 2 chips are not going to claw back the damage that Game Week 34 did. So it's not like it's season over. I can still climb back up the ranks a little bit. But I don't think I'm going to get back to 25k. Top 10k is definitely done now. And it was just such a bad week. I know what people want me to talk about. Free hit 29 versus free hit 34. It's been a discussion for so many weeks now. And look, I think if you want to label a winner overall, it's probably free hit 34. I would say on average, people did better with free hit 34 than free hit 29. But I still stand by the decision to use it when I did because it just worked better for my team. This isn't hindsight. I said many weeks ago, I still really like the wildcard 30, free hit 34, bench boost 37 strategy. But as soon as Villa lost to Chelsea and I couldn't have my Arsenal players and Cole Palmer in Game Week 29, I had to switch strategies. And it's gone okay up until this week. And now it's been absolutely awful. But there's still plenty of people that free hit 29 and have done really well. Look at FPL Harry. I think he got like 120, 130 points because he had the right players this week. It just so happened that I didn't. And ultimately, whichever strategy you went with, it still comes down to the actual choices you make. I bet there's some people out there that free hit 34 and have had a really bad week because they just had the wrong players. And it just felt like a bit of a, for my team anyway, a bit of a domino effect ever since Game Week 31. So in Game Week 31, I sold Fernandes, who's absolutely smashed it since, 6 goals in 4 games. I sold Foden ahead of his hat-trick so I could get Salah and Darwin, who've both done absolutely terrible. And a different route I could have gone was Watkins. I would have still sold Fernandes for what it's worth, but Watkins and Fernandes are Salah and Mateta. And instead of Darwin this week, I've got Mateta. That's worth 27 points on its own. I would have had Foden's hat-trick. That's another, 17 points or so, because obviously I would have had someone else that played that week anyway. And suddenly you're looking at nearly 40, 50 points just from that one decision in Game Week 31. What was my original plan for Game Week 33? To get Jordan Pickford in, who went and scored something like 17 or 18 points. What did I actually do because of the fixtures? I went for Dean Henderson. He scores 5 points, gets an own goal in the double. Like, I don't know. I don't think they were terrible, terrible decisions, but the outcome is absolutely massive, right? I've got Gabriel and Saliba. I've taken double Arsenal defence into a double game week where they've kept clean sheets in both games, and it still doesn't feel like enough because Ben White has combined their score. I've had Saka, who's got to return 9 points, but Havertz and Odegaard have both smashed it. It just, like, even the hardened, sorry, not hardened, the people that were absolutely adamant the whole way that free hit 34 was going to be better, surely even they can see there's been quite a few, big swings. And I don't want to take anything away from people that use that chip this week. You should be loving it, right? Like, I'm sure you are. I would be. I'd be talking about it all the time. But it just felt like everything went right. The week where people double and triple up on Crystal Palace players, they score more than 3 goals for the first time all season. I actually worked it out because I like to feel the pain. Mateta has scored 29% of his attacking returns, so goals and assists, this week in game week 34. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. And also the two, outside of maybe Foden, the two key single game week players that could have caused some damage, Palmer and Haaland, they both miss out. Like, it's just one of those weeks where it felt like every single thing went for people that free hit in 34. And just like I'm feeling like my season's almost over, I'm sure those people that use the chip are feeling like absolutely smashed it, loving life right now. And what can we do for the rest of the season? So it just hasn't gone well at all. But really, it's down to the individual choices I made rather than the chip strategy. I could be sat here. Like, I would never have had Ben White because I wouldn't have sold Gabriel or Saliba. I could absolutely have Mateta instead of Darwin and Pickford instead of Henderson. And just those two decisions, by the way, probably gives me a green arrow this week. So that's how close it was. So yeah, that's free hit 29 versus free hit 34. Hopefully we are fully done with that conversation now. I'm happy to label free hit 34 as the winner, even though I don't think free hit 29 was that bad of a strategy. In terms of where the rest of my points came from, so Gabriel and Saliba 26 combined, the same score as Ben White. Dean Henderson did get a clean sheet in the second game, so finished on 5 points, but the own goal already killed me the match before. Zabani came on for Haaland, and I think that's another one of those that's like really frustrating this week, because had we known that Haaland was going to miss out, I would have done Haaland to Mateta, not got Van Dijk, who only scored 2 points, and just played Zabani instead. And again, then you're up like 34 points just from that one decision. Salah captain, absolutely terrible. Only started one game, blanked in the other one. I'm very happy to wildcard him out at this point. Obviously, Saka did get a return, but not as good as Havertz and Odegaard. And Sarabia only played one match, and obviously Wolves completely blanked against Bournemouth. My transfers in were Eze, I can't remember what the other one was. Oh yeah, Eze and Van Dijk. So Eze did really well, 14 points, but Van Dijk was just terrible. And Darwin Nunez, I don't even want to talk about him. He's gone in my wildcard team. He's not coming back this season. Maybe in game week 38, but probably not. I guess if there's one positive, I would say I didn't bench boost, right? Some people were saying I should bench boost this week. I knew with Haaland being a doubt, I couldn't do it anyway. But in total, my bench scored 0 points. Neto 1, Doughty -1, and then Haaland and Palmer 0 points. So I'm glad I saved the bench boost, but that's not really a positive. It was just a terrible, terrible week. But all we can do is move on and talk about game week 35. So let's have a look at the wildcard. So as I'm sure you know by now, I'm wildcarding in game week 35. The chip is already active and I'm going to bench boost in game week 37. This is what the team currently looks like. Nothing is fully final yet, not until the deadline tomorrow. I need to listen to all the press conference updates and stuff like that. But there are a lot of players that I'm pretty confident that I'm going to have by the time we get to tomorrow's deadline. So goalkeeper combination hasn't changed from the wildcard draft that I did on Monday. I've still got Vicario and Edison. I really like that combination because you get Vicario, who's nailed for every single game for the rest of the season with his double this week. Even though it's not great on paper, Arsenal at home and Chelsea away, I still prefer that over most single game week goalkeepers. Then you've got Edison ready for next week against Wolves at home in game week 36. In game week 37, obviously you bench boost for both of them with double game weeks. And then in game week 38, even if the title's over and Ortega plays for Man City, Vicario's got Sheffield United away, and I'm more than happy to play him for that game. So I quite like that combination of keepers. If I decide to go for a second Spurs attacker, which I don't currently have, then I may just change Vicario to Onana. One thing to mention is I only have 2 Chelsea players in this squad, which isn't that usual for me when a team's got a double game week this week and another one in 37. I'm just not massively confident about any of their defenders. Even if Pochettino says Gusto is fully fit, I'm still slightly worried about how many games he's going to make over the final 6 that Chelsea have. I'm not really big on Cucurella or Disasi or anyone like that. They just don't feel worth putting in, even with that one extra game. And Petrovic, I'm just worried that Sanchez might come in at some point. Maybe that is over worrying. Maybe Petrovic will just play the final 6 games. But I just don't really want that doubt. So even though Spurs fixtures aren't great this week, Vicario just kind of feels safe in terms of starts and stuff like that. So that's why he's currently in. I could swap to Petrovic or Onana. I'm not ruling that out. But at the moment, that's what I've got. In defence, the 3 playing this week are Dallo against Burnley at home, Burn against Sheffield United at home, and Pedro Porro, who obviously has got Arsenal at home and Chelsea away, as I've just said. Porro is apparently back in training, hoping to make the Arsenal game. I'll wait to see what Ange Postecoglou says. But if he's available, he's the one defender on wildcard that's actually a little bit exciting, that has that attacking potential. Obviously, Udogie's out for the season. Trippier's still not fit. Trent is quite expensive, plus he doesn't have the double. So I think I want Porro in. Do I like double Spurs defence this week? Not really. But I can bench both of them against Liverpool away in 36. And then the double in 37 obviously includes Man City, but it's a home game. And they've also got Burnley plus Sheffield United final day of the season. So I don't mind that double up in general, but I appreciate on paper it doesn't look great this week. But it's all about fitting in those pieces of the puzzle, right? I would like to go for Petrovic in goal instead of Vicario and have a second Spurs attacker. I'm just not sure I can convince myself that Petrovic is the one. And if I go for Onana, that's double Man United defence. And that also doesn't sound that great to me. So there's just a lot of options are just being ruled out, and that means that other players almost become like default picks for me. Dan Burn is in purely for money. I've only got 0.6 million in the bank. I think Share is the better option, but I don't know if he's worth paying the extra 1.2 for. It's worth saying in my actual team on the FPL page, I've still got Share because I bought him at 5.6, but I suspect by the time I get to, because he's gone up to 5.7, by the time we get to the deadline, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have Dan Burn. And I think Dalot is the best Man United defender. I think Maguire is definitely an option, a nice cheap option, and there's definitely a chance that I end up with him. But I've got the money, and I do prefer Dalot if the money, is there. And essentially, I think Dalot and Burn is a better combination than Share and Maguire. Like Dalot just plays 90 minutes every single game, and I just don't think that changes before the end of the season. If Man United get some centre backs back to fitness, maybe Maguire misses a game. I don't think it's that likely, right? I actually think Maguire's a really good pick this week if you want a cheap Man United defender. But there's just slightly more doubts than there is with Dalot. But like I said, I may end up with Maguire. And on the bench on Monday, I had one Arsenal defender. I've currently got two. I've got both Gabriel and Saliba, who I've had in my team since game week 12. I do think that Ben White is a better option than Saliba because I've got Saliba so early. It's going to cost me 0.4 million to put Ben White in. And to be honest, he may be worth that. But I'm conscious that by the time I get to game week 38, I might need as much money as possible to make moves possibly for Salah or Saka back in, whoever it might be. And I just think it's worth keeping Saliba, who I've got a lot of value tied up in. Do I like bench boosting in game week 37 with two Arsenal defenders away to Man United? Not really. I appreciate how good the Arsenal defence has been, but I would still expect Man United to score in that game. But it's more so what it enables outside of that week. So I can bench them both this week against Spurs, where I would expect Spurs to score. I can play them both against Bournemouth at home in 36, and just one of my other three defenders. I bench boost them in 37, and then in 38 I have them for Everton at home. And if the title's still open there, that's a pretty good fixture, I would say. I want to go for another double game week player. At least one. I don't think I'm going to go without Arsenal defence entirely, but I could just go with Gabriel and just ditch Saliba. But I just don't know which other double game week defender to go for. Like maybe Gusto if Pochettino says he's fully fit, but I still don't trust him, as I've said. None of the other Chelsea defenders are that exciting. I can't have another Newcastle player. I can't have another Spurs player. I can't have a Man City player because I've got two attackers. It would have to be like a Brighton defender. That just doesn't excite me whatsoever. Or another Man United defender. So having Dalot and Maguire for Arsenal at home and Newcastle at home in 37, I just don't know if that is enough of a reason to do it versus having those Arsenal defenders for 36 and 38. So they're not really in for 37 bench boost. They're more so in for the weeks around it. And that's currently where I'm sitting. If I ditch one of my attackers, like one of my Newcastle attackers, I'd probably put Share in instead of Saliba. But as it stands right now, I just don't have the slot. So I like that goalkeeper combination. I'm hoping that Postecoglou says that Porro's fit. If he's not, it then gets really tricky. I suspect if Porro's not an option, I'll put Share in and I'll just get a second Spurs attacker instead of a Newcastle one. Yeah, that's the defence. Let's look at the midfield. So because I'm recording this before the press conferences, I'm currently playing a 3-5-2 and I've got Haaland first bench. Now, I wouldn't get too hung up on that. That may change based on what Pep Guardiola says in his press conference today. But if he is a doubt going into game week 35, but probably going to be available for game week 36, then I definitely want him in the squad. And ultimately, because I'm building a wildcard side to bench boost in 37, I've got 8 good attackers. and I've got a bit of a benching headache. So actually, Haaland missing 35 but being back for 36 would be quite good for me. Palmer's also flagged, a yellow flag. He's been seen in partial training, so hopefully he'll be fine. But ultimately, things might change based on what Pochettino says. I think ultimately, I really want Palmer and Haaland for 36, 37, and 38. So as long as one of them is fine, it's not an issue. If they're both ruled out, then I need a rethink. But I'm going to wait until after the press conferences to kind of consider my options, essentially. So Haaland and Palmer are both in. The other 4 midfielders, as it stands, are Foden, who I don't think I can leave out. Right? I don't think there's really any justification for it. He did really well again last night. And I think with the league title still open and no European matches and stuff to contend with, there's every chance he starts every single game until that title is won. And obviously the fixtures for Man City are pretty good. So Forest away this week, Wolves at home in 36. The double is Fulham and Spurs away. And then it's West Ham at home, last game of the season. There's every chance that Foden plays all 5 of those matches. And he's just been so good. He's still great value. Would I like De Bruyne in this team? I'm thinking about it, but it won't be instead of Foden. I think he's got to be in. Even though he's super popular and people that free hit or haven't free hit are probably going to have him still, I've got to have him. I don't think there's any real... There's no point in overthinking that one. Son is definitely in as well. I need at least one Spurs attacker with 2 double game weeks. He's guaranteed to play pretty much every single match. He did come off early against Newcastle, but that doesn't really worry me too much. At some point, he could move back to the left and Richarlison could play through the middle. Again, we'll have to wait and see what Ange Postecoglou says. But either way, Son's the one attacker you can mostly rely on, even though the points haven't been there recently. And I've said before, I think some of the games he's got coming up might suit him a little bit better as well. Maybe not dropping deep so much, but actually getting in behind. So I quite like Son. I've gone to Anthony Gordon, who I think most people in their wildcard will have. But honestly, I'm still not completely set on that. If Porro's injured, or I decide not to go for Vicario in goal, I could see myself putting in Brennan Johnson or James Maddison. I understand how many returns Gordon has had at home this season. That is one of probably the best fixture you can have as well, Sheffield United at home. And he's a great option this week, right? I'm not trying to say he's not, because of course he is, right? Everyone can see that. But I like the differential of the second Spurs attacker. Also, they're playing Burnley at home in game week 37, which is good. Then Sheffield United away in game week 38. And they are going to be a big differential. Whichever second Spurs attacker you go for, not many people are going to own them. And there is part of me that's tempted to go for a Brennan Johnson punt. It's not really my kind of move normally, but I am hoping to roll in 36 and have 2 transfers in 37. And there's not really anything else planned. So even if Brennan Johnson becomes an issue because he's not starting or his minutes are actually a bit lower than we think, he can always be moved on to maybe Richarlison if he's back in the team. You've got Pascal Gross and Adingra at Brighton. There are other options to go to. I've got a free Man United slot. I could go to Garnacho. So I am slightly tempted to go for the second Spurs midfielder. But if I can't convince myself on Petrovic and Porro is fit, then going for the double Spurs fence doesn't look terrible. Maybe it does this week with Arsenal at home and Chelsea away. But overall, I think it's okay. And obviously, Gordon's just a solid option. And also, one of the advantages to wildcarding is hopefully, right, you pick 15 good players that are all fit and you don't really have many issues. And then later on, if you do get them, you've got the spare transfers over other people. But at the same time, stuff can come up. And having players like Gordon that you know are going to start every single game and get good minutes when you've got a bench boost to come, they can be kind of handy. And I don't really need to convince anyone watching, because I think most people are just going to go for Gordon anyway. But I don't know, there's a slight doubt in my mind, but only because I want the differential second Spurs attacker. But I think this setup just works probably a little bit better. And then Bruno Fernandes, for the same reasons as Gordon, you know what you're going to get. He's going to play every single game. He's also got penalties, good fixtures, just not one to really overthink. If I bring in De Bruyne, it'll be for Bruno Fernandes. And I'm tempted to go for that punt because I think De Bruyne's got a chance of starting every single game as well. But there's probably enough doubt there to not risk it. And even when De Bruyne does play, he very rarely gets to 90 minutes. So the question is De Bruyne, let's say he starts every game, is De Bruyne for 60 to 70 minutes a game better than Bruno Fernandes for 90 minutes with penalties? I think most people will probably say it's De Bruyne, but I think it's actually a little bit closer than that, even though Bruno Fernandes is definitely a more boring pick. I don't know, triple City attack is tempting. I could ditch Edison and go for someone else. But I think Fernandes probably just makes a little bit more sense. There's just a few other pieces that have to fall to get De Bruyne in, and I'm just not sure it's worth all the sacrifice. But I'll show you that in a minute. For now, let's just quickly talk about the forwards. And then my other two forwards with Haaland on the bench are Isak against Sheffield United at home this week, and obviously Newcastle have the double in 37. And then Nicholas Jackson, who's my second Chelsea player. And Chelsea have obviously got 2 double game weeks to come. Plus, their single game week fixtures aren't that bad. In 36 is West Ham at home, and in 38 is Bournemouth at home. The yellow card threshold has now been increased for all teams. Nicholas Jackson is 6 yellow cards away now from getting a suspension. There's not really any issues there because they've only got 6 games left, and his minutes are pretty secure. And I actually think from an attacking perspective, Chelsea's fixtures aren't that bad. Like Villa away this week and Spurs at home is their double. The double in 37 is Forest away and Brighton away. I think overall it looks like a pretty good pick, especially for 6.8 million. Is Nicholas Jackson going to be just as frustrating as Darwin Nunez? Potentially. But I just think he makes absolute sense on a wild card where you've got 6 fixtures in 4 game weeks to just take that risk. He will get chances. It's just a case of will these be the games where he actually puts them away? Probably not, but I'm willing to take the risk. There's just no way, even me as someone that a lot of people see as a safe and boring manager, can put someone like Ollie Watkins in with just 4 games. I'm going to take the punt on Nicholas Jackson, and I'm pretty happy with that. Nicholas Jackson is one of the players that's basically locked in this team. I just don't see me going without him unless Pochettino turns around and says he's injured. Do I like the fact I've only got 2 Chelsea players? Not really. But it's either the goalkeeper or the defender. And apart from the Arsenal players, Chelsea only actually have 1 extra fixture over everyone else. I know they've got 2 double game weeks, so it sounds like more than that. But obviously most other players have a double in 37. So it's just 1 extra fixture this week. I don't know. I might change my mind. It'd be something like Saliba to Gusto and then bench Dalot this week. Maybe something like that. It's possible. I mean, even if Gusto misses 2 games out of the 6, I guess he's got the same amount of fixtures as Saliba. But also, that I don't know if that's good enough, right? Because he's not as good in 36 and 38 as the Arsenal defenders are. I don't know. I don't like the idea of going into this week with just 5 doublers from Spurs and Chelsea. But if I can get through this week without too much damage, I think that's definitely the right call. I can always get one in later for 37. If I don't know, someone else for Chelsea's playing really well, I can always bring them in. But I'm pretty happy with that. I think ultimately this is one of those wild cards where I'm probably only picking between 3 and 4 players now. There's only 3 or 4 places in the team that are really up for grabs. And it's going to be a case that I may well choose the wrong combination. But what can you do, right? They're all pretty close decisions. In terms of trying to get De Bruyne into this team, first things first, I need to set up what I just had there. So Dan Burn would be in, Porro would be in as well. It's making quite a few sacrifices. I still haven't sold Saka, by the way. I'm too afraid to do that because he's been so good to me this season. But eventually he will go, probably tonight, to be honest. So that's how it's set up with 0.6 million in the bank. One easy way to get De Bruyne is just Fernandes out, and then you've got to make up 1.5 million. And obviously Ederson would have to drop out because I'd have Foden, De Bruyne, and Haaland. So Ederson would probably go to Onana, to be honest. And then that gives me double Man United defence. And I've got to save another million. One move is to get rid of Isak. If both Palmer and Haaland are fit this week, I could go against Isak for 35 and just have João Pedro on the bench instead, who should get pretty good minutes for Brighton. That actually gives me 1.8 million to spend. So I could even upgrade. Sorry, actually, do you know what? I don't even need to do that. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. I could just get Maguire instead of Dalot, sorry. So I could actually keep Isak. So basically, Fernandes to De Bruyne and Onana in for Ederson, it does work. As long as Burn and Maguire are good options, which I think they are. But I don't know. That is quite tempting. Essentially, Onana and De Bruyne versus Fernandes and Ederson. I think most people would take the De Bruyne punt. I just think Fernandes has been so good. And he's so consistent. And you know he's going to play. And he's got penalties. Like, will De Bruyne definitely play this Sunday against Forest after just playing Thursday night? Only played 71 minutes. Is it a guarantee? I don't know if it is. And then in 37, you've got exactly the same thing. It's Saturday to Tuesday turnaround. You presume he'll definitely play against Spurs. And it's a week off between Wolves and Fulham. So maybe he plays Fulham as well and just comes off early. I just don't know if I need those doubts. But that's the combination, right? Onana, Maguire, De Bruyne, or Ederson, Dalot, Fernandes. That's basically the only kind of things I'm looking at now. The De Bruyne punt is tempting, but I've had Fernandes in my thoughts for this wildcard team for so long. I just don't know if I want to go against that. But now I've put it together and realised I could just sell Dalot to Maguire. I'm quite tempted. Anyway, I'm just going to end up rambling here, and it could all change once I hear the press conferences. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. I'm going to go through all the press conference news later on for final thoughts, answer some questions as well. And if there's any major updates to this wildcard team, I'll talk about them then. Otherwise, obviously, I'll just get it locked in on the deadline stream tomorrow. So make sure you join me for that. And I'll catch you again later today.